Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of choices in your life? Or felt that persistent pressure to make the right decision, knowing that the path you choose could define who you are? That feeling of both freedom and burden is at the heart of Jean-Paul Sartre's philosophy. Sartre believed that we, as human beings, are condemned to be free. It sounds contradictory, right? But here's the paradox. Freedom gives us the power to shape our lives, yet it also leaves us with the terrifying responsibility of creating meaning in a world with no given rules. In this video, we're going to unravel Sartre's powerful and unsettling idea of freedom, how it can both liberate and overwhelm us. And more importantly, we'll explore what Sartre's existentialism can teach us about living authentically in a world that constantly pressures us to conform. If you've ever felt stuck between making a choice and fearing its consequences, this is the philosophy you need to hear. And if you can do me a favor and subscribe and hit the thumbs up button, it would really mean a lot to me and it would really help this channel. To understand the paradox of freedom, it helps to know a bit about the mind behind it. Jean-Paul Sartre was a French philosopher, novelist, playwright, and one of the most prominent figures of 20th century existentialism. He was born in 1905 and lived through a period of intense social and political upheaval, including both world wars, which significantly influenced his work and thinking. Sartre's philosophy is closely connected to his personal history. He studied at the prestigious École Normale Supérieure in Paris, where he was deeply influenced by phenomenology and the works of philosophers like Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger. His relationship with Simone de Beauvoir, a fellow existentialist and feminist icon, was also integral to his life and thought, as both were committed to exploring the boundaries of freedom in their personal and philosophical endeavors. During World War II, Sartre served briefly in the military and was eventually captured by the Germans. This experience, along with his time as part of the French resistance, shaped his views on freedom, oppression, and human responsibility. Sartre saw firsthand the consequences of surrendering freedom to authoritarian systems and believed passionately in the individual's power and duty to resist. Sartre's work spanned many genres, but his major philosophical texts, like Being and Nothingness, 1943, laid out his existentialist vision. He argued that existence precedes essence, meaning we are not born with a set nature or purpose. Rather, we must define ourselves through our choices and actions. This concept became a cornerstone of existentialist thought, emphasizing that the responsibility to create meaning in our lives lies entirely with us. Throughout his life, Sartre remained an outspoken advocate for human freedom, using his platform to engage in political and social activism. He even turned down the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1964, seeing it as a way to preserve his independence from institutions and reinforce his commitment to authenticity. His life's work was dedicated to exploring the complexity of human freedom, its costs and its rewards, an idea that continues to resonate today. Understanding Sartre's background helps us grasp why he viewed freedom in such paradoxical terms. For him, freedom wasn't just an abstract philosophical idea, it was a lived experience, rich with both possibility and profound challenge. Now that we've gotten a sense of who Jean-Paul Sartre was, let's dive into the heart of his philosophy. Existentialism. As mentioned earlier, existentialism is a philosophical movement that places the individual at the center of the search for meaning. Sartre, as one of its most influential figures, built upon the ideas of earlier philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche, but he pushed existentialism into the cultural spotlight of the 20th century. At its core, existentialism is about grappling with the reality that life has no inherent meaning until we give it one. Sartre's famous phrase, "existence precedes essence," captures this beautifully, Unlike a tool or object, which is created for a specific purpose, human beings are thrown into existence without any predefined purpose or essence. In other words, we are not born with a set role or identity. We must define these things ourselves through our choices and actions. This freedom to define oneself is central to Sartre's philosophy, but it also leads to what he described as angst, or existential anxiety. Because we have no pre-given script, every choice we make becomes crucial in determining who we are. There is no external guide or destiny that can tell us what we ought to do. We alone bear the responsibility for our actions and, by extension, for our lives. Sartre emphasized that with this freedom comes a profound burden, the realization that we are fully responsible for the consequences of our actions. This responsibility can be overwhelming, which is why Sartre described humanity as condemned to be free. While it is empowering to think that we can shape our lives, it is also daunting to realize that we cannot escape the responsibility of our choices. There is no higher authority that can absolve us of this. Even the decision not to choose is, in itself, a choice. Another key idea in existentialism is authenticity. Sartre encouraged people to live authentically, meaning that we must acknowledge our freedom and act in accordance with it, rather than hiding behind social roles or excuses. When we deny our freedom or conform blindly to societal expectations, we fall into what Sartre called bad faith. Bad faith is essentially self-deception. It is the act of pretending that we are not free to make our own choices, often as a way to avoid the anxiety that freedom brings. Existentialism, then, is not about despair, but about taking ownership of our existence. It's about understanding that while life may lack inherent meaning, we have the ability and the responsibility to create that meaning for ourselves. Sartre believed that true fulfillment comes not from following a set of predetermined rules, but from engaging with life directly, making choices that reflect our own values and aspirations. As we move forward, keep in mind these foundational ideas. Existence precedes essence, the burden of absolute freedom, and the importance of living authentically. Sartre's philosophy, while challenging, offers a powerful framework for navigating the complexities of human existence. Now that we understand the foundation of Sartre's existentialism, let's turn to the paradox that lies at the heart of his philosophy, the paradox of freedom. As mentioned earlier, Sartre believed that freedom is a defining aspect of human existence, yet this freedom is both a source of empowerment and an overwhelming burden. So, why is freedom paradoxical? To Sartre, freedom is our ability to make choices independent of any predetermined essence. We are not constrained by a fixed nature. Rather, we are constantly shaping our identities through our actions. This, in itself, sounds incredibly liberating. We are the authors of our own lives. However, Sartre also argued that freedom brings a profound and unavoidable weight of responsibility. Because we create our own purpose and make decisions without the comfort of an inherent guide, every action we take contributes to defining who we are. This realization can be terrifying, as it means we are wholly responsible for the trajectory of our lives. There's no fallback plan, no higher power directing us. We alone must navigate the choices we make. One way Sartre explains this feeling of burden is through the idea of anguish. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff. Not only do you fear falling, but you also fear the realization that, in your freedom, you could choose to step off the edge. It is the anxiety that arises from knowing that you are fully in control of your actions, that nothing is forcing you one way or another. Sartre used this metaphor to illustrate how freedom makes us constantly aware of our possibilities, and with it, the fear of what we might do or become. This sense of anguish is directly tied to Sartre's idea of responsibility. Since there is no external moral compass that dictates our actions, we bear the full weight of determining what is right, meaningful, or valuable. It means that every decision, big or small, is ultimately our own. This can be incredibly daunting. It's no wonder that many people seek ways to escape from this responsibility. Here, Sartre introduces the concept of bad faith, which we touched upon earlier. Bad faith is essentially an attempt to escape the anxiety of freedom by pretending that we do not have a choice. It's when we convince ourselves that we are bound by social roles or external expectations, like saying, "I have no other option, this is just the way things are." Sartre believed that this kind of self-deception allows people to avoid facing the heavy burden of their freedom, but at the cost of their authenticity. For example, think about someone who claims they must stay in a job they despise because it's what's expected of them. By attributing their choices to societal pressure or external obligations, they avoid the discomfort of making a genuinely free decision. However, Sartre argued that even this avoidance is a choice to live inauthentically, to deny one's freedom. The paradox, then, is that while freedom grants us incredible potential, it also demands a level of courage and honesty that can be deeply unsettling. To live authentically, according to Sartre, is to embrace both the exhilarating possibilities of freedom and the weight of the responsibility that comes with it. It means acknowledging that despite our fears, we must make our own choices, and that those choices ultimately define who we are. This paradox resonates powerfully in our everyday lives. Many of us face choices that can feel overwhelming, decisions about our careers, relationships, or simply how to spend our time. It's easy to fall back on routines or expectations and let them dictate our actions. But Sartre challenges us to recognize that regardless of the pressures we face, we are always free to choose. This freedom is at once daunting and empowering, and it is precisely what makes our lives meaningful. Now that we've explored the nature of freedom, it's time to delve into two critical ideas that Sartre used to describe how people relate to their own freedom: bad faith and authenticity. These concepts illustrate the choices we make when faced with the weight of our freedom, and they help us understand how we can either deny or fully embrace what it means to be free. As mentioned earlier, bad faith, or mauvaise foi, is the term Sartre used to describe the act of self-deception, essentially lying to oneself to avoid the discomfort of true freedom. In bad faith, individuals try to escape the burden of their freedom by pretending they have no choice or by conforming to societal roles and expectations without questioning them. It's a way to find comfort by avoiding the anxiety that comes with making truly autonomous choices. Consider someone working in a job they dislike, but they tell themselves that they have no other option. They might claim, "It's just what people do," or "I have responsibilities, so I can't leave." By accepting these excuses as absolutes, they are denying their own ability to choose differently, to seek other opportunities, or to reshape their life. In Sartre's view, these individuals are willingly limiting their freedom. They are, in effect, avoiding responsibility for their own lives in order to feel less vulnerable or uncertain. Bad faith can also manifest when people rigidly define themselves by their roles. For example, a waiter who fully identifies only as a waiter, as if that label encompasses his entire being, is falling into bad faith by reducing himself to a single fixed identity. By doing so, he denies the many other possibilities of who he could become. Sartre believed that people are always more than the roles they occupy. We are dynamic beings who are constantly changing, and bad faith is what prevents us from embracing that fluidity. In contrast, Sartre saw living authentically as the antidote to bad faith. Authenticity involves acknowledging our freedom and embracing the responsibility that comes with it. It means facing the anxiety of choice head-on, accepting that we are the authors of our own lives and making decisions that are genuinely aligned with our values and aspirations. Authenticity is about taking ownership of the fact that we are, ultimately, free to shape our destiny, no matter how daunting that might seem. To live authentically is to recognize that the constraints we perceive, be they societal, cultural, or personal, do not wholly determine who we are. Instead, we choose how to respond to these constraints, and in that choice lies our true freedom. Sartre emphasized that authenticity doesn't mean living without challenges or avoiding all external influences. It means making decisions with a full awareness of our freedom and our capacity to transcend limiting beliefs. An example of authenticity might be someone who, despite societal pressures, decides to pursue a creative career instead of a more conventional one. They acknowledge the risks, understand the anxiety involved, but still decide to follow a path that is true to themselves. It's not an easy choice, but it's one that comes from accepting and embracing their freedom, rather than evading it through conformity or excuse-making. Sartre's focus on authenticity encourages us to confront the aspects of our lives that we might prefer to ignore. It's about being honest with ourselves about our freedom and our choices, rather than hiding behind a comforting illusion. The pursuit of authenticity isn't always easy. It's challenging to live without excuses and take full ownership of our actions. But it is precisely this pursuit that makes life genuinely meaningful. To sum up, the struggle between bad faith and authenticity is central to Sartre's philosophy of freedom. Bad faith allows us to escape from the burden of freedom by avoiding difficult choices and hiding behind societal roles, but it also limits our potential. Authenticity, on the other hand, embraces the anxiety of freedom, recognizing it as an opportunity to define ourselves genuinely. Sartre's challenge to us is to face the reality of our freedom with courage, to live without excuses, and, in doing so, to create an authentic life that is truly our own. Let's now take a step back and look at how Sartre's ideas about freedom, responsibility, bad faith, and authenticity can be applied to our lives today. Though Sartre was writing in the mid-20th century, his philosophy is strikingly relevant to the challenges we face in the modern world, especially in a society that often seems to demand more choices and more decisions than ever before. One of the most significant aspects of Sartre's philosophy is the way it helps us understand the anxiety that often accompanies freedom. Today, we have more opportunities to shape our lives than at any other time in history. We can choose our careers, our partners, our lifestyles, even our identities, in ways that previous generations could hardly imagine. While this unprecedented freedom is empowering, it also brings about a sense of existential pressure. Sartre's concept of being condemned to be free speaks to this very feeling. The realization that despite the abundance of choices, it is still up to us to make decisions that define who we are. This awareness can lead to what is often described today as decision paralysis, or the fear of missing out, FOMO, the anxiety of not choosing the best option in a sea of seemingly infinite possibilities. Moreover, Sartre's idea of bad faith can be particularly illuminating in the context of modern social norms. In a world shaped by social media and cultural expectations, it can be tempting to define ourselves based on what others expect of us, or to portray an identity that conforms to societal ideals. Bad faith, as Sartre explained, is about refusing to acknowledge our true freedom to choose our path, and instead conforming passively to external pressures. This is a common struggle today, where the pressure to project an idealized self can lead to inauthenticity, losing touch with who we really are beneath the curated images we present to the world. Consider, for instance, the choices people make when deciding on a career. In many cases, Societal expectations or perceived obligations can steer us toward a particular job or lifestyle, often at the expense of our true desires. Sartre's philosophy challenges us to question these choices and to ask whether we are acting authentically. Are we truly making decisions that align with our values? Or are we taking the path of least resistance to avoid the burden of uncertainty? Sartre's emphasis on authenticity also resonates with the current trend towards self-discovery and personal growth. He encourages us to embrace our freedom fully, even when it feels intimidating, and to make choices that reflect who we genuinely are rather than who we are expected to be. Living authentically means being open to change and recognizing that we are constantly in a state of becoming. It involves accepting that we are responsible for creating our own meaning, and that this process is ongoing and dynamic, not something that is settled once and for all. This notion of self-creation is particularly relevant in today's rapidly changing world, where people are constantly re-evaluating their lives and their identities. The rise of flexible career paths, non-traditional relationships, and evolving social norms means that people have more opportunities to redefine themselves than ever before. Sartre's philosophy provides a framework for understanding this freedom. It is both an opportunity and a challenge, and it requires a willingness to confront our anxieties and make choices that genuinely reflect our individuality. Ultimately, Sartre's existentialism offers both a challenge and a call to action. To take ownership of our freedom, to resist the temptation to live in bad faith, and to strive for authenticity in our everyday lives. In a world that often feels chaotic and overwhelming, Sartre reminds us that meaning is not something we find, it's something we create. By embracing our freedom, with all its paradoxes and uncertainties, we can live lives that are truly our own, filled with the significance that only we can bring into being. Sartre's ideas are not just abstract philosophical musings. They are tools for navigating the complexities of modern life. Whether it's deciding to take a leap in a new career, choosing to end a relationship that doesn't feel true to who we are, or resisting the urge to conform to social expectations, Sartre's philosophy reminds us that these decisions are ours to make, and that the courage to make them is what makes us truly human. The power of Sartre's existentialism lies in its honesty. It does not shy away from the difficulties of human existence. Instead, it calls on us to face them, to own our freedom, and to recognize that through our choices, we define who we are. In this way, Sartre gives us not only a challenge, but also a path to a more meaningful life, one that is defined by our own values and our willingness to live authentically, despite the anxieties that freedom may bring. I hope this discussion has sparked some reflection on your own choices and how you navigate the balance between empowerment and responsibility. If you found this content valuable, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the thumbs up button. Thank you very much for watching.